Shalom. I'm start by giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and salutation to the awfully elect that is pushing this world in the four corners of highways and byways. Once again, our praises, glory, and honor is due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kodash. All right. Hey, and this lesson gonna be a rant, basically, about women, right? And the things that I learned, when it comes to dealing with women, right, throughout my experiences in and before the truth, right? And let me start by saying this: the apostles was always right, right? And the more I get older, the more I understand, why they say don't worry with these women. Just focus on the truth, and if you want to deal with an harlot, right? Because it's much better for brothers that way, right? Hey, but some brothers get the women, right, that is acceptable, is doing acceptable work, right? Which is good, right? Nobody is saying to, leave your woman, right? Or anything like that. But just generally speaking, a good 90%, just generally speaking, a good 90% of the experiences that you're going to have with women is going to be unpleasant, all right? Especially with the so-called black woman, right? The Judah, Benjamin, and Levite women, right? Is going to be terrible, right? Hey, and even to, again, the apostles say it's better to, in these times, it's better to deal with a heathen women than to deal with the Israelite women. The southern the northern kingdom is a little bit better than Judah, Benjamin, and Levite, but the curses is on them too. The curses is on them too, right? So, hey, might as well deal with an Eden woman or deal with an harlot, right? Because these women, they're full of traps and snares, right? Because when they realize that you have a certain code of conduct, a certain standard about yourself, because this truth is a standard, right? What they do is try to falsify the image, falsify the, they themselves, right? To try and get with you, right? Tell lies, right? When you ask them about their interest, they seem to be interested in things that you interested in, only to find out a couple months later this bitch is into nothing, other than herself smoking weed, having a good time, shit like that, right? Having a so-called good time, right? And even stuff like a lot of these women out there, you walking around with medical issues, not to say like AIDS and STIs and those things, which they are those too, but just weird shit like iron deficiency and this deficiency, this and the chronic illness. You don't want to deal with a woman like that, right? Because instead of she being a helpmate to you, you're gonna end up being a helpmate onto her, right? That is what it's gonna be, right? And then a lot of these women, once you reach or I should say once they reach a certain age, a lot of them already have a lot of children, right? Or maybe just one or two, but even though it's a sticky situation, most brothers don't want to deal with, right? Hey, but like I said, this is just a rant about women, right? And again, just to reinforce what the apostles, been saying, been teaching us, right? Just leave these women alone. Just work on yourself. Focus on the truth. And if you want to deal with a woman, deal with an harlot, because it's much more easier for brothers that way, right? Right? A lot of these women, I've been scarred by previous partners, some of these women was molested, just some weird shit, right? Because again, they under the curses, right? So when you're going to pick up a lot of these Israelite women, they're very unhealthy, right? Talking about mental illness and physical, illness, right? A lot of them, the diet is fucked all the way up, right? Which causing them to have shit like, pH imbalance and this and that, hormone imbalance and all kind of weird shit, And there's not, what the Mosai really intended for us. The Mosai intended clean, chaste virgin for the men of Israel, right? But right now we living like the fucking Edens, right? This is Isaiah 3 and verse 16. It says, moreover said the Lord, because the daughters of Zion are haughty, right, and walk with stretch forth necks and wanton eyes, right? Meaning they're always looking for something, you know? And a lot of times the something is be another man besides the own man that they dealing with, right? You know, it tells you that in I think it's Jeremiah the 3rd chapter on the last few verses, right? They deck themselves for the lovers, you know, plural, right? But yeah, it says, with wanton eyes and stretched forth necks, walking and mincing as they go, making a tinkling with their feet, right? Because, you know, they're arty, they want to be seen, you know, the contrary to modesty, which a woman shouldn't be, all right? You know, and like I said again, especially these so-called black women, right? Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, they love to be seen, all right? You know, and the new age, all right, or the modern way is social media, all right? You know, the so-called blacks, Latino, and native women, they love to be seen on social media, all right? In a way that is not so common with other race, they, you know, because the so-called black and Latino women, they like to show off the skin. They like to, you know, show off the body, right? They love attention. You know, verse 17, it says, therefore the Lord will scab the crown of your head of the daughters of Zion, and the Lord will discover their secret parts, right? Yeah, and that's why a lot of, you know, black women, your hair is fucked up, you know, because of the curse. And you bitches be putting all kinds of shit in it, right? Right? Verse 18, it says, and in that day the Lord will take away the bravery and the tinkling ornament about their feet, and their calls, and their wrong tires as the moon, right? Yeah, so the Most High took away a lot of beauty from the so-called black, Latino, and native, you know, women of the Americas, right? The Most High take away their beauty. The fuck? You know? Right? As you read down, it says, the chains and the bracelets and the mufflers, the bonnets and the ornaments of the legs, and the headbands and the tablets of earrings. Alright, you know, all this is jewelry. But what the so-called black and Latino women will do nowadays, you know, wear fake jewelry, you know, because they're trying to get it back, you know, because in the spirit, they know how things, you know, they know how things should be in the spirit, right? But, you know, they're not, they're not spiritual beings, you know, they're very carnal. So they look upon the carnal, right? You know, but really deep down inside, their spirit, you know, yearning to get these kind of things back. You know, but the Most High wouldn't give it back to them right now, at least, because, you know, they out of fucking order, you know, completely. You know? The so-called blacks, Latino, and Native women, they're out of order, right? Hey, and like I said earlier, you're gonna find some tribes is going to be little better than some, but it's not going to be a big difference, right? It's not going to be a big difference, and you know, it's basically gonna be the same thing, right? Reading on, it says the rings and the nose jewels, the changeable suits of apparel, and the mantles, right? Yeah, all these is jewelry, right? What else it says? It says and the mantles, the wimples and crimson pins, the glasses and the fine linen and the hood and veils, right? Yeah, so these women that be talking about princess treatment, right? You know, what they're referring to as princess treatment is not even close to this, right? And this was when they used to be treated like princess, you know, because our women are created to be princesses, right? You know, because if the Israelite men are kings and priests, you know, kings and princes, then the Israelite women has to be princesses and royalty alike, right? But just like how the Most High, you know, take away the kingship from the men of Israel, he took away the princesshood from the women of Israel, you know? And the scripture even say it's their fault that we in this mess, you know? So you have to be very careful with women, brothers, right? Because also what it say whining women will cause a great man to fall, you know, roughly paraphrasing, right? You have to be careful with those two things, you know, because and the funny thing is that when you get one, you automatically start thinking about the other, right? You know, that's just kind of funny. Yeah, and you know, those two things is a deadly combination, right? It's a deadly combination. Right, continuing, it says, and it shall come to pass that instead of, well, let me say, the glasses and the fine linen and the hoods and the veils, and it shall come to pass that in that instead of sweet smell there shall be stink, and instead of a girdle, a rent. Right? Yeah, and the sweet smell is, because early up in the verses it says the Most High is gonna discover their secret parts, right? Your secret parts, which goes back to what? The private parts, the vagina, right? And now it says instead of sweet smell, it shall be stink. Yeah, and those going back to a lot of the health issues that I mentioned earlier that a lot of these women have, they be dealing with all sort of fucking demons in their body, right? Diabetes, cancer, pH imbalance, hormone imbalance, right? And all these things just make them less than the ideal partner, right? Make them really less than ideal, right? And you don't want to go picking up a set of stress, you don't want to go picking up something that is gonna take your mind away from whatever you got going on, with the Most High, even on the business side as well, your personal life, right? You don't want to pick up somebody that is gonna take away from your goals, and that's why in this time the heathen women, they're more suited to be dealing with, right? Right, so hey, hopefully the lesson was edifying. Actually, you get a little bit more here. Let me read. It says, instead of girdle or rent, and instead of a well set here, and instead of a well set ill baldness, instead of a stomach or a girdle, right? Yeah, and this is why you be seeing a lot of black women, the hair on the head is balding, and not just black women, but a lot of Israelite women in general, right? They they destroy the hair, the little bit of hair that the Most High allow them to keep, to destroy it, you know, putting all sort of chemicals in it, all sort of heat processes and pressing and all kind of these things. And now the entire let's call this, the edges is gone, you know, they bald. All right, you don't want to look at them. All right, you know, as a man, you don't want to look at them. You know, you want to look at something beautiful, something with a nice set hair, something with good skin, right? Which for some reason a lot of black women don't have, you know. And again, that actually goes back to the diet also, right? The diet is fucked up. That goes back to the diet, and a lot of so-called black women were raised like boys, like men, right? They were raised to be tough and rough by the mothers, right? Who hate the father, you know, who hate men in general, right? And it's not no example for the daughter, you know, or daughters, right? So with that, then you end up with a total disaster, you know. And that is another thing too, you know. Remember, again, going back to the curses, right? The woman that is tender and delicate and the man that is tender and delicate, they're gonna we're basically going to ruin the families, right? So a lot of black women, right? Israelite women in general, and Israelite men too, they you know, but the men is not a topic right now, right? A lot of these women come from broken homes, all right? So they never saw a good family structure, so they don't know what rules to follow, you know, right? They don't know what a good family household looks like. They don't know how a man should treat a woman, or how a woman should treat her man. And they just go in, you know, anyhow with their relationships, all right? Or they gonna let the internet decide how they should treat their man, or how their man should treat them, right? And again, you know, those traps, you know, are out there by Esau to catch the black woman, right? You know, these music that they pushing in the airways, right? These movies, these series, you know, it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit, and it's all set up to trap these women, right? And these black women is the top consumer of these nonsense, right? Of this shade room bullshit, right? So hey, again, the apostles and elders, you know, starting with elder apostle to our on down, was always right, you know. Leave these women alone, deal with a harlot, and it's better to deal with a heathen woman than an Israelite woman, right? And these are all things that I could say is 100% truth, right? Based on the experiences that I have had and other men had, right? No, it's the general consensus amongst brothers, you know, and even two-thirds, you know, two-thirds prefer to deal with heathen women as well, you know, because hey, everybody realize that there's not much value there for you. And I say everybody, I mean men, realize that there's not much value there for you when you're dealing with these black women, you know? Hey, hopefully this lesson was edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Makakadash. Double honors to the apostle and elders of Great Millstone, sanitation to the hopefully elect. I say shalom.